Welcome to the First Responders Network. I'm Crystal Bailey, live from IACP at the Axon booth. I have with me, a pleasure to have with me, Assistant Chief Yoganada Pittman of U.S. Capitol Police.
Yes.
Now, Chief, you took on the role as the police chief of the U.S. Capitol Police right after January 6th at the Capitol.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Tell me about that experience.
Oh my gosh. So I think that my life and the agency, I think a lot of the country has been changed forever because of the events that took place on January 6th. It was a horrific day for the men and women of the agency, but I can tell you I could not be more proud of those officers that fought for hours on January 6th to defend the United States Capitol. So proud of them.
An insane event. I was working for the fire department at the time in the communications division, media and communications division, and I can say, having been in the city of D.C. that day, was intense.
Yes, very.
And I know the U.S. Capitol Police had to endure a lot, even media scrutiny. But you were also the first African-American and woman to lead the department at the time. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was humbled and honored to be in a position to be able to do so. And although it wasn't necessarily apparent to me when it was happening, now that we're a little bit removed from it, a lot of the feedback I've gotten, not only from around the country, but from around the world, just let me know what a honor and privilege it was to be in that position, what it said to young girls in particular, young girls of color, black girls. You can do this. You're leaders. You're naturally born leaders. This is within your realm of possibility. And so I'm just so humbled and honored to have been chosen and selected to be in that position at that time.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Now tell me a little bit about the dynamic of the Capitol Police. You know, it's a federal agency. How do you think it has grown or been able to grow in diversity? You know, has it been a quick transition or a quick movement, or has it been relatively slow? What do you think about the diversity?
So Capitol Police, like many other law enforcement agencies, have diversity initiatives. I'm proud to say that we are well above the national average in several categories. For female officers, for female leaders within the department, we're well above the nation's average, which is about 12%. We're at about a little under 18%.
Oh, wow, okay.
But with that said, there's a lot more work to do. We have a pretty robust and diverse population of officers. We're about 30% African American, closely followed by our Latino population. We have a much smaller Asian population and Native American or Pacific Islander. But we have made intense and deliberate efforts to expand our diversity within the department, not only on the sworn side, but on the civilian side as well. We recently hired a new diversity director who's laid out a strategic roadmap for the U.S. Capitol Police over the next 5 to 7 years. So we have a plan in place. We've been acting on that. We work with our historically black colleges and universities. We target underserved populations. So we're making those deliberate efforts to change those numbers and, more importantly, change the culture of the United States Capitol Police.
That's amazing. And I know this is really important to you. You know,
very near and dear to my heart.
You shared with me that you are studying, you're working on your dissertation now.
Yes.
Specifically targeting women in leadership, diversity. Can you share a little bit about what encouraged you to move in that direction?
Absolutely. So in 2012, myself and another female officer became the first black African American female captains in the history of the agency.
Okay.
And so 2012 was not very long ago.
Right.
So we definitely had our work cut out for us. But immediately I was able to see the impact that we were able to have on the agency and what it meant to be representative of a particular population. So I was already in a master's program, um, finished that, and decided, okay, well, it's time to now be Dr. Pittman. So when it came to focus on a area to defend or do my dissertation in, I'm not more passionate about anything else other than female leaders, women in law enforcement, and I know how great the need is and how impactful we bring, the tools and resources that we can bring to police agencies all across this nation and around the world. So that's been my focus over the last couple of years.
And what is your research found? What would you say is the impact of having women in leadership? What can a female law enforcement officer, specifically as an executive, what kind of impact can they make on their community?
Well, I believe that women are naturally born nurturers. We lead with compassion. We have a nurturing spirit. A lot of us are moms, sisters, friends. So there's a different mindset and tone to the type of leadership that we exhibit. All of the studies say, we're less likely to participate in excessive force and things of that nature. And while I think that's important, I also feel like, more importantly, there's a compassionate heart that we have. There's probably less ego involved. We're more likely to make ourselves vulnerable and to say what we don't know. I don't know everything, but I'm going to work very hard to find out those answers. So I think there's a softness that is necessary when you're talking about that human component. Sometimes police officers, most of the time, are seeing people at their worst times in life. And sometimes all they have left is their self-respect or dignity. We have to cater to that in law enforcement. There's naturally things that we need to do with tactics and being strategic, but we also have to lead with compassion and love.
Now, I mean, when you're talking about this, when are you finished with your dissertation? When is it? Are you?
So, according to my academic advisor, my goal was to be Dr. Pittman by December of this year, but I'm a little bit off schedule due to my work commitments, so I'll see. But I'm very closely there. I can feel it.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you so much.
And honestly, it's wonderful to see that. Now, how are you taking what you've been working on and kind of replicating it to people, who are just starting out, recruiting a diverse population of law enforcement officers, retaining them, and how is that important to the overall community as a whole?
Absolutely. So U.S. Capitol Police has really been impacted like all of the law enforcement agencies here. I've heard it in a number of sessions that I've attended, particularly with recruitment and retention. We lost hundreds of officers after January 6th, not only to injury, but many left the agency. Us, like many others in law enforcement, are challenged in our profession, particularly after the George Floyd killing.
Right.
There's been this sentiment and undertone that people don't want to be involved or don't want to be cops. They don't want to be the police. So we've had to really dig deep, pull in some outside resources, meet with our stakeholders, and really come up with a strategic vision on how we're going to change that tide, change that tone. And I couldn't be more proud of the Office of Background and Investigations, the recruiting team, our media team. We just have done a rebranding, so to speak, to make sure that we're getting in front of and ahead of attrition for our agency. And I'm proud to say our numbers are really looking good.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And I think realistically, recruiting these different kinds of people,
yes,
is really something that impacts. I know you're on a federal level. You're working to defend a building and the people inside of it.
Yes.
And those are very important people inside of those buildings.
Yes.
But I'm kind of curious. Even grassroots level people who are within law enforcement that somebody can say that person looks like me. Talk a little bit about how that can change interactions in the community between law enforcement and the people that they're serving.
Absolutely. So, like you said, Crystal, our mission is vast. We're the only legislative law enforcement agency for the entire United States
Oh, I
Congress.
did not know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so our mission is to protect them as well as the legislative process, one we take very seriously. But with that, we have, prior to COVID, somewhere upwards of 11 million visitors to our campus from
Mm.
all across the world, not just around the country. Right now in this Congress, we have the most diverse Congress that we've ever had
Wow.
in this nation's history. So the American people deserve to have that reflective in their police agencies. We have lived experiences that we can connect with when we see a person that looks like us. If I'm a woman, sometimes I may feel more comfortable speaking to a woman. If I'm a person of color, I'm just going to immediately identify with those persons. It's not to say that we can't connect with others, but we want to make people feel welcome and for them to embrace the law enforcement community as well as the culture.
Yeah. And I imagine it's different levels of, if there's a conflict,
Yes.
resolution could be different
Yes.
when you see someone who looks like I don't know by my own experience, but I can assume that that might be the case.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. There are certain lived experiences that I had because I grew up in a certain community. I speak a certain language. The slang, the terms, the climate. You want to connect with people and meet them where they're at, so
Yes.
you can quickly diffuse or de-escalate situations when you can communicate with a person in a native tongue that they understand.
Mm. So, I mean, I'd love to talk about the moonshot goal
Yes.
and even your reaction to it. So, as you know, Axon has really pushed their new goal to reduce or cut gun-related deaths by 50% between police and the public in 10 years. What's unique about the goal is that although Axon has pushed it, it's really something that we're hoping everyone can take part in and make their goal and make it their own goal. Every law enforcement leader here in this conference, everybody who might be listening to this
Yes.
interview. What do you think about this goal, and what has been, the overarching theme amongst the leaders at this conference about it?
So first off, kudos to Axon for even setting the goal and setting the tone to wanting to reduce gun violence in this country. You can't turn on the TV or the news any day of the week and not see how it's really impacting communities all across the nation. It's really important for us to analyze the data, to look at technology that Axon is providing, but we also have to add in that human component and human element. I think that as law enforcement really embraces cultural change, that's when we're going to see the partnership between law enforcement and like companies like yourself with Axon really change that tide. As a law enforcement officer, when I'm going into a community, if I'm looking at an individual as a human being, I'm seeing that that could be my uncle, that could be my grandmother, my niece, my nephew, or my cousin. I'm going to respond to them differently if I feel like this is someone who I'm looking at as a human being. I may be seeing them in a time of crisis, but I want to look at them as human first. How can I help them? Because that is somebody's child, that's somebody's mother, and to ever be involved in taking a human life is just tragic on many fronts. Someone is losing a loved one. So I think that we really have to have a training that's focused on that human component. So and vice versa for the community.
Right.
That officer is somebody's father. That officer is somebody's mom, somebody's sister. Sometimes if we can look past the uniform, and if that means law enforcement needs to interact with community engagement without wearing the uniform, because sometimes people can't get past that.
Yeah.
But I need you to see me as human first. And when we connect on that level, our humanness will say we have a respect for human life that just goes beyond our wildest imagination. And I think we will see that tide start to change.
I don't think anybody could have put it more beautifully than that.
Yes.
That's extremely, I mean, the way that you just worded that is really the real heart
Yes.
behind what this moonshot goal is about. And unfortunately, culture and society is so tumultuous, especially situations after 2020.
Yes.
But it's so important, and I love that you mentioned
Very.
training
Yes.
and even technology and ways we can do that. And I do think there are some tools that exist today that have
Yes.
helped provide that. So, with FRN, we're really trying to use body camera footage,
Yes.
to show the human side of a police officer and every time that they've saved somebody's life.
Mhm.
And that video exists, and these things are happening, and it's just a matter of getting that story out and reminding people that, hey, that officer that patrols your neighborhood is somebody's brother, like you said.
That's right. And we can really change that narrative. This is an incredible opportunity. While the climate is tense, it's an awesome opportunity for us to say we have to do some policing of ourselves. We have to change that tide. We have to change that culture, but we can't do it by just doing the same old things. And it can't be an incremental approach. It's got to be bold and challenging. And so I think the Moonshot program is those type of bold changes that communities all across this nation are expecting of law enforcement, and we're willing to take on that challenge.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's really awesome. So, I mean, as far as, you mentioned, you're even talking about taking on that challenge and the responsibility that law enforcement officers have. I think,
Yes.
luckily we're here at a convention center where there are hundreds of police chiefs all over the
Yes.
country, that police small agencies, large agencies, federal agencies, all sizes of agencies. How do you think transparency, kind of combining that with that diversity element, how do you think those two things align and also promote the moonshot goal and making that a possibility, a real reality?
Absolutely. Transparency is key. Communities demand it, and quite frankly, they should. We should expect to be transparent. People want information, and they want it quickly. And so the more transparent we can be, we can work and engage with communities to help learn what those challenges are. Take off the uniform for a second, take off the badge for a second. And once again, Crystal, going back to just being human, what can I do to help this family? What can I do to help this community in this situation, even aside from keeping them safe? Those other services that many social justice groups are asking for, the social service department, the mental health and wellness component. People have basic human needs, and when those human needs aren't met, you find that those communities are challenged, and they're looking for other ways to get those needs met. And sometimes they may involve activity that's not productive for the community. So how can law enforcement really engage to bring or assist with bringing services to those communities that are not just about policing? It's about being compassionate to those human needs.
And what needs are you specifically thinking of in this moment?
Food, shelter, education, extracurricular activities for
Right.
young people, just programs, the arts, music. There's a whole genre of fields that we can engage communities on. But if a person doesn't have basic shelter and food, it's life for them is just a challenge and a struggle. I think that a lot of times when police officers come into the profession, we all come in with that human component, that compassion. We really just want to help people.
Yeah.
We don't come in wanting to go into a physical fight or assault or things like that. We train because there are sometimes we're going to be in situations where that happens, but we really want to help those communities a lot of times that we've come from, and we see the challenges that we've had in life and those members that we're taking an oath to protect. We haven't always been the persons that we are now. I can say now at my age, when I look back over my life and all the lessons that I've learned, some of the challenges that I've had, I really want to be a change agent for those in the community because I can identify with mental health and how important that is, wellness challenges. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so I know what it's like to have to struggle a bit. And I would be remiss if I left this out. My mother was an ordained minister for 30 years, and if it wasn't for my faith, um, I don't know that I would have been as successful after an incident like January 6th if I didn't have that to lean on. So I think there's a spiritual component to this as well, that sometimes it's almost taboo to talk about it, but we've got to. We've got to do some things differently to engage people and meet them where they are so we can expect success with a program like what you're promoting.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it's really amazing to see how far you've come.
Yes.
Get to know you a little bit while you've been here in town.
Thank
both
you
in
for
Dallas at the
having
same
me.
time.
Oh, this has been awesome.
Yes, and I really appreciate your perspective and your insight. And I'm sitting and waiting for the next big announcement for where your career takes you. So.
Well, I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm excited to have met you and all of your Axon team. You've been absolutely phenomenal. I'm excited to see what the next 10 years brings.
Yes.
But I'm optimistic, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to be in a much better space. And it's not going to take us 10 years to get there. We're going to beat that mark very quickly.
I like that enthusiasm.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And stay with us on FRN. We still have one more interview today with a chief, and we're so excited to bring you Chief Vera Bumpers, who also won the Woman Law Enforcement Executive of the Year Award for 2022. So stay tuned.